Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another video with On Point Politics. And today we're going to be interviewing Christian Hines, the most accurate Virginia modeler in history. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe for more content just like this. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, Lester, I'm Christian Hines. I'm based out of Culpeper, Virginia. For those who've been following Virginia politics for quite a while now, they might know who I am. I started doing this probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And I think in the last month or so, a lot of people on YouTube and Twitter caught a tweet from mine from Halloween of 2021, where I predicted that Youngkin would win the statewide election for governor by 1.88%. And I believe he ended up winning that election by 1.93. So my model was ultimately off by 0.05, and that got a lot of people excited. I also predicted the state legislative elections in Virginia that were held last year for the House of Delegates and State Senate. The model that I built, it's actually kind of funny. The model that I built called accurately 139 out of 140 seats in the legislature. I only got 138 right because I actually disagreed with my own model in one race that Republicans ended up winning that I thought they would lose. But the model accurately called that. So I thought that was kind of funny that the models that I built are actually even more accurate than I am. So.
Right. So yeah, guys, clearly he's had a pretty good track record. He actually was good in 2021. I mean, he predicted that. He had a private modeling for 2020, and I think you said it was like half a point off, correct?
Yeah, it was within a point. So I was working for the Nick Freitas campaign for U.S. Congress for the 7th District. He's probably like my best friend. I'm actually on his podcast making the argument twice a week with him. He ran for Congress in the 7th District in 2020, which was one of the most hotly competitive congressional elections that year. And unfortunately, he came up very short. He ended up losing by like about a point and a half to Abigail Spanberger. I built a model internally for that campaign because I just wanted to see what it was going to look like. And the model ended up showing him losing by about 2 points. And like I said, he ended up losing by like about a point and a half. So it was within a single point of the outcome. It was unfortunate that it showed he was going to lose, but it is what it is. Sometimes we can't always win, right?
Right, but even you predicted Biden's margin within reason, I think, or is that?
Yeah, it was within like a point. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head because I didn't tweet them out. I was working on a national campaign at the time, but I've got it buried somewhere in my computer, the old file. It was within like a point.
Right. So again, pretty good because even a lot of people didn't even predict a Biden +10 victory in Virginia. Not a lot of people did. A lot of people had +7, +8. Or on the way higher end. No one really had in the middle. So that was pretty fascinating to see that. And then in 2021, you pretty much were the most accurate person for the governor's race there. So that was pretty crazy too. And then looking at 2023, you were like dead on almost in literally all the legislative elections. And so now we're in 2024. And Kamala Harris, if we go to 538, we'll pull up 538 really quick because things are looking not great for Harris in terms of the polling because, yeah, she's still up. But the problem is that Joe Biden was polling significantly better like back then, even compared to the final margin. We'll actually just pull it up really quick. But right now, in the aggregate, she leads by 6.8% in the aggregate. And if we look at 2020 on October 6th, we see that Joe Biden led by 11.9. That's like a 2-point overestimation of Biden's margin. And if you were to apply that to this, she'd only be up by 4.8. And I have her winning by like 2.5. So I want to kind of have you commentate, and we'll kind of pull up Election Shuffler really quick here just to see. But what would you necessarily think would have to happen in the state to kind of get the margin? First of all, where do you think the race is right now? And what do you think would have to happen for this race to kind of shift in that direction?
So that's a great question. You and I have gone back and forth with like DMs on Twitter talking about this. I'm a little bit more pessimistic than you on Virginia, but not by much. I, at the moment, am looking at probably Harris +5 to 7. So I'm probably close to where Nate Silver's at right now. That could change between now and the election, though, for the same reasons that you brought up with the polling overestimating Biden in Virginia this time 4 years ago. But at the moment, that's where I'm at. I think she'll probably win by 5 to 7.
Mhm.
come back and ask me, in 3 weeks if that's still the same thing. But I think in order for Trump to win, or let's say just put this within, battleground striking distance, right? What he really needs to do is kind of twofold. He needs to improve with exurbs. So we're talking places like Stafford County, Chesterfield, Hanover, Fauquier, Culpeper, where I live, Spotsylvania. These aren't necessarily the core suburbs of Richmond and Northern Virginia, but they're just on the outskirts of it, right?
Right.
The second thing that he has to do is he really needs to start driving up margins with low propensity voters. And the good news is that we're actually seeing that. I have a rolling database that I've been updating every single day, not counting
Right.
weekends, where I've been tracking early votes that are coming in Virginia.
Right.
And
You have been doing that.
yeah, and I've been basing it off of, in order for it to be credible, I've been basing it off of the same model that I built for 2021, where I accurately predicted Youngkin's win. And so I would stake my life on the data being correct. Now we're at leads, we don't really know yet, but the fact of the matter
Right.
is that I am very confident that the numbers that are being shown here are accurate because it's based on the exact same model that I built. Well, there goes all the lights in my house. It's based on the exact same model that I built in 2021. And
Right.
so when it says that Republicans are currently crushing Democrats with low propensity voters, I believe that. I believe that with my heart and soul. And I know that the way that Trump makes this state competitive is he's got to win these type of voters that either did not show up in
Mhm.
2020 or they're newly registered. Because let's be honest, there's a difference between somebody that's 23 and just registered for the first time and somebody that's 50 and skipped the last 5 elections, right?
Right.
Got to win with both of those groups, or he's got to improve with those groups. And
Yeah.
in terms of geography, where he does it is actually in the old suburbs, the inner suburbs of Northern Virginia that are more like that have fewer white college educated suburbanites that are, voting for Democrats increasingly. Like it's the same places that Youngkin improved on. Like Youngkin's best improvements were in places that were heavy Hispanic, heavy
Yep.
Black, and heavy Asian populations inside places like Fairfax County. And
Yeah.
if Trump replicates that, suddenly this moves from being a 5 to 7 point victory for Harris to, oh no, this is actually in play. We just don't know how it's going to play out yet.
Right. Because again, guys, it's still really early. We're still in the beginning of October. Christian's going to need a lot more data to get a final picture of the race. But right now, it's very obvious that Kamala Harris is definitely not going to match Joe Biden's margin, and that's probably going to be an outlier election more than likely. 2020 did have a lot of outliers. I mean, you had a global pandemic, for crying out loud. That was one of the top issues. It was essentially healthcare. Like, people would say healthcare was one of the most important issues alongside the economy, but that was really because it was COVID. And a lot of people that were affected by that were in populated suburban areas. And so it made sense that they were looking for the candidate that they most agreed on that issue. And so that may have accelerated leftward trends in a lot of places that otherwise really wouldn't have taken place. And so this is where you're seeing a huge, humongous discrepancy now, where Trump is performing much better with lower propensity voters than he was before, presumably because his approval ratings have gone up, his disapproval has gone down. Kamala Harris does not equal Joe Biden. They're not the same two candidates. And I'd love for you to talk about any anecdotal experience you've had in regards to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden not being the same candidate, and how that could also help Trump as well.
Well, you and I have been talking on, off camera and even before, uh,
Mhm.
before we started recording here that and sometimes we miss these like really easy questions for all the, interpreting the data a million ways, right? How's the
Mhm.
early vote going to break? What's the county basis look like? What's the turnout? Favorabilities. Sometimes it's important to just take a step back and ask like some really basic questions. The first question that I told you before is that like, look, is Kamala Harris a stronger or weaker candidate than Joe Biden was? I think
Right.
there's no question, and I mean the Joe Biden of 4 years ago. I don't mean this year's Joe Biden, right? I have no question in my mind that she's a weaker candidate than he is. The second
Right.
question is Donald Trump in a stronger or weaker position than he was 4 years ago? I have no doubt that he's in a stronger position. 4 years ago, the country was on fire. It was locked down. The economy was tanking. People were unemployed. There was unrest. and Trump was blamed for it all. I think he was unfairly blamed for it because it was mostly Democrat governors that were doing this stuff, right? But the fact is that he was in the White House. He was getting the blame for it when the entire country was imploding in on itself.
Right.
Now, he's not the incumbent. He's the challenger. Everybody knows that Harris has been running the country for 3 years because nobody thinks that Joe Biden's running anything, right?
Of course not.
And she's less popular than he was 4 years ago. And so I think Trump's in a stronger position relative to 4 years ago. I think Harris is in a weaker position relative to Joe Biden 4 years ago. And when you just look at those two things, in a state like Virginia, it is almost inconceivable for her to win Virginia by a larger margin than Joe Biden did.
Right.
I have no doubt in my mind that at the moment, and the data is showing this right now, Republicans are currently at this moment, they're in a stronger position with the early vote than they were in 2021 when they won the governorship. Yep. The only reason that I am right now not projecting Trump to win Virginia is because I think election day is going to be bluer. But, there's a lot of people that have grounds to disagree with me on that point. I've heard from a lot of constructive criticism that's like, Christian, I think that, it's cope coming from Democrats that say like, oh, well, I know that we've always been voting early, but now we're just going to show up on election day because it so happens that the trends show that we're not winning early voting in a landslide. Like,
right. Yeah.
Right. And like, that's a really fair point. And so like, I just want people to understand that like the modeling that I've built, I feel like I've given her as much grace as I possibly can. I feel like I've given her as many excuses. I've given her the benefit of the doubt in every single way. And yet even then she's winning by like less than 7. And so like, we're looking, I feel like at least a 2 or 3 point shift to the right, at least at the moment.
Yeah. Minimum.
At a minimum. Yeah.
And that's with it trending to the left of the nation too. It's probably going to trend like a point or two left of the nation. So that would basically assume a minimum of a Trump +1 national environment, essentially, at that point. If you're looking at a shift.
This is why I'm like so optimistic about Trump's chances in like the upper Midwest and in states like North Carolina that are demographically much more similar to Virginia. Because look, at the end of the day, if Harris is losing ground in a state like Virginia, which has shifted to the left heavily over the last 20 years, and even if Virginia doesn't shift to the left relative to the nation, because it might, there's a good chance that Virginia will continue to march to the left like it has the last 20 years relative to the country. I have another tweet thread where I show a list of all the swing states in their margins relative to the country going back 40 years. And Virginia has shifted like 10 points to the left since 2004. If that happens, in addition to what we just talked about, at that point, her path to victory is almost non-existent. But even if that doesn't happen, she still has a hard time winning states like Pennsylvania and North Carolina and Georgia. And so like, I am not nearly as, people who know me from Virginia politics that have followed me for years knows how pessimistic I am about Republicans. And I tend to be very pessimistic about Republicans because we've not had a good time in Virginia with the exception of the Youngkin victory. But I've got to say, even with all those caveats, I just have a hard time thinking how Harris has some sort of clear-cut path to victory. I feel like that Trump is at least marginally favored right now.
Right. And it's kind of funny, too, because right now, again, guys, he hasn't officially released the model yet. It's still too early. But what right now, he's trying to see what Harris's ceiling is by giving her a super big advantage in the election day vote and like modeling the early vote like super favorably towards Democrats. And even then, what was she up by, like 5.5?
The thing that I told you, and this will be a sneak peek for your audience. So at the moment, I have Harris up by just over 5.5. I think it's like 5.6. Now, this changes every day because we get new data, right? So just keep that in mind. But keep in mind, that is after she is given all of those like benefits of the doubt that we were just talking about. And even if this continues, I really have a hard time seeing the model end up breaking more than 7 points her way, according to the modeling. And remember, I feel like that I've built a model right now that, if anything, it's probably underestimating Trump, not overestimating him. I have a really hard time believing that it's overestimating Trump. To give you an idea, election day, which we haven't gotten to that point yet, this could change, right? But what I have in the model as a placeholder until I actually release the official numbers is that I have Trump only barely winning the election day vote in Virginia. But when you go back to the last 2 election cycles in 2022 and 2023, and this kind of dispels the myth that you're hearing from a lot of black pillars and Democrats that, oh, we're the high propensity base that shows up in every election. Okay, great. You show up in every election. 2023 was an off year election. It wasn't even a midterm. And it was just for the state legislature in Virginia, right? So theoretically, the most high propensity turnout oriented election that you can think of, you have to be really super in tune to show up in an off year election. Even then, Republicans won the election day vote in Virginia in 2023 by like 6. My model right now has Trump winning election day by less than 2. And that's how you get the outcome of Harris winning by less than 5 right now. So just keep that in mind. Like, I feel like if anything, if that's off, Trump's probably going to do better on election day than what the model is currently showing. And if that happens, then we're not looking at Harris plus 5 to 6 or 7. We're looking at more like 2, 3, 4, 5 at the most. Right? I mean, everything gets, and now it's more in line with what you've been predicting. So
it would be closer to what I have. And again, you have it at Harris plus 5.5 with everything going right for her in the best case scenario, alongside some of the really bad early vote data that they've been getting that you've modeled out. And it's still only Harris plus 5.5. So just keep in mind, guys, he's modeling right now a preliminary kind of model so he can understand, okay, what is Harris's like almost best possible performance? And he doesn't even think it's going to be over 7 if she has a really good night.
Yeah.
That's like an extremely good night. Remember, it's going to trend left to the nation. So if it's going to trend left by 2 points and it's only a 7-point win, that's like a tied popular vote or like Trump plus 1. And I have Trump winning the popular vote by like 3 to 4, which is what Alice Intel has. And it's sort of like a point lower than what, that's a point higher than what Rasmussen has, who's also been decently accurate at the national level in 2016 and 2020. So it's like, how can you physically say that she's going to perform even in line? Like Harris plus 9 in Virginia is not happening. It's not going to happen.
It would require the early vote to break very hard for her in the next, 2-3 weeks. I mean, they're running out of time at this point. In fact, actually, another interesting point, and we'll know if this is going to replicate or not, but on Friday, on what was that, October 4th, I believe, was actually the anniversary of the date that Democrats peaked in their early voting in Virginia in 2021. Every subsequent day beyond that, it wasn't a straight line, right? But, it went up and down. But they never again had a margin in the early vote, according to my model from 2021, that was higher than it was on that day. And we've already passed that day. So we should start getting data in the near future that will really go to illustrate what trajectory Virginia is going to go down. Is it going to move more towards swing state status, or is it going to move more towards that 5 to 7 range, which is what I currently think it's going to end up looking like? But again, even then, even if Harris wins by 6, even if she wins by 6.5, hell, even if she wins by 7, I don't see how you can have a Harris plus 7 victory in a state like Virginia, which is 3 points to the left, more than 3 points to the left of 2020, and her still hold on in these states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Georgia, these must-win states for her.
No, yeah, of course.
I think that Trump point is that we're like a month away from election day, and the data that we're seeing in Virginia on a county basis, on an early vote basis, on a propensity turnout basis, all 3 things right now are pointing to a much, much redder environment than 4 years ago. It might not be red enough to actually flip the state, might not even be red enough to get it within 5 points, but the fact is that it is still going to be much redder than it was 4 years ago, at least right now.
Right. And Christian, that's it for this right now, at least. So Virginia is a lot more competitive than it was before. And those are warning signs for the Harris campaign. So if you guys want to go follow him on X, go ahead and give them your @ on X or any of your social medias as well.
Sure. So the 2 places that I would recommend people take a look at is, one is the Making the Argument podcast with Nick Freitas. He's a really good friend of mine. He's a state legislator in Virginia. He's got a really big following on YouTube of his own. He's got over 1 million subscribers. I'm on his podcast twice a week where we talk about this type of stuff, elections, philosophy, politics, the culture war, stuff like that. Second place is, if you want to just follow my Twitter, it's just my name. It's at Christian and then Heiens, no spaces or anything like that. Weird way to spell Hines, but yeah, it's just at Christian Hines with 3 vowels in a row, EIE.
Right. And all right, Christian, thank you so much for joining on. We appreciate your input. Again, we're trying to be as accurate as possible here.
Yep.
And funny enough, right now I have it as Harris plus 2.5, and you have it as Harris plus 5.5. That's literally a 3-point miss from what I have. And that's with you giving her like that absolute benefit of the doubt. And she's only winning by 5.5.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens with the early vote the past couple of days. It'll be interesting to see if that happens again, where Republicans start gaining. Because if that happens, your model's going to have under 5 in no time, even with the pessimistic modeling. So we'll see what's going on. And your stuff's definitely going to be a big check mark for me to see if I'm going to be correct. Like if Alice Intel checks out, if you check out, if certain people check out, I'm going to feel really confident in my prediction going into election night.
Well, I appreciate that.
Of course. And so we'll see you guys very, very soon. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want more content just like this. And we'll see you guys in the next video.